Hi. So we've had some excitement in Sheffield these past few days, which probably people have had around other parts of the UK and the world as well, um, which is that we had a really massive snowfall. Well, not really massive. It felt quite massive, about 10 inches probably of snow a few days ago. To the point where everything was covered and we couldn't get the car out, and it just looked really beautiful, and the trees are beautiful. Um, and I really enjoy the snow. I really like it when we get that substantial snowfall that covers everything, and everything looks so beautiful and clean and white and pure, and you can walk in it and be the first tracks walking in the snow and make a snowman in the garden and that kind of thing. Um, and I decided on the snowy day, because our puppy Ziggy, who's 8 months old now, seems to really like the snow. I took him to the local field to have a good run around with some of the local dogs, which was great fun. And I want to share just a little story from what happened there, and then illustrate some other things that are going on in our lives at the moment. So I'd been chatting to another lady, and we set off back up the small hill, small slope from the field. And I was quite aware walking around the field that the snow was quite slushy. It was quite deep, but quite slushy. And prior to this, we'd had a lot of wet weather and everything was very muddy. I set off up the slope towards the road and slid on the bank. And instead of just sliding down on the snow, very quickly it was apparent that I was sliding in mud, which had been exposed from underneath the slushy snow, and lost my footing. So instead of a nice white slide down, it was a very muddy slide down. And it just struck me then how superficial the snow was, really, that actually all the mud was still there underneath, even though it had been covered up by the beautiful white snow. And I started thinking about that, and just looking around me as the snow started to melt, that just all around the streets, all the litter appeared again, and the weeds appear again, and rubbish appears again, and everything that was there before the snow came is still there. It's just that when the snow is there, you don't see it, it's hidden. And so for a little while, you can imagine that it's not there. And I think there are lots of things in our lives that are a bit like that. That they're there in the background, they're there beneath the surface. Things like anxiety and fear and shame and um, worry about things, how we see ourselves, um, how we value ourselves, all sorts of things that are underneath the surface that get covered up with superficial things. So things like being busy or working or distracting ourselves with things, escapism, lots of things that we can use as that covering, that snow covering, so that we get some relief for a while, so that we can not not have to deal with them, not see that they're there. And there were probably times in our lives when we need to do that a little bit, where we need to just survive. But actually, long term, if we really want to be well, then we need to be willing to do the clearing out of what's actually there, rather than covering it up all the time. Um, and I thought I'd share another story from a few years ago in my own life that probably illustrates quite well um, what can come out if we're willing to address some of those things. So I'd had problems with an erratic heartbeat, which I'd had for quite a long time, and my heart would go either really fast or really erratically, and I'd often feel quite unwell with that. I went to see a heart specialist, and we tried different medications and even tried surgery to sort of frazzle the bit of my heart that was firing off when it shouldn't. And I really wanted a fix. I really wanted a quick fix, preferably, but I just wanted it to go away so that I could carry on doing what I'd always been doing. Um, and medically, it didn't happen. Because I have a faith in God, because I believe that He's a good God and He's powerful, and that Jesus died and rose again for me and has paid a price for me to be free. I I thought, well, God can do this. God can just put His finger on my heart. He made me in the first place. He can heal, and I've seen people be healed. I've seen many people be healed in all sorts of different ways, and I had the faith that He could do that. And I was prayed for and I believed for that, but it didn't happen. Um, and so I was still left with this problem. And I think I started to realize at that point that actually there were lots of things. I was getting more and more frustrated and anxious and stressed about it and fearful with it. And I realized that actually in the background in my life, there were lots of other things that had been going on for many, many years. Things like fear, fear of illness, fear of death, fear of something happening to me, an anxiety about what people thought of me, where I got my value from. Was I working hard enough? Was I pleasing people? And there were all these other things ticking along in the background. And I realized that actually I needed to look at them, that they mattered. And to cut a long story short, I spent about a year doing a number of things. I had some counselling. I looked at what God said about stuff, about not being anxious, about trusting Him with things, trusting someone bigger than me, the God who's bigger than me and knows everything. Do I believe that or not? What do I actually believe? What do I really believe and live out? Um, and changing some of the ways that I thought about things. Now that is hard work. It's not easy. It's not nearly as easy as taking a tablet actually, or having that quick surgical fix that we hope for. Um, but the interesting thing was that as I changed, as I started to worry less about what people thought about me, as I started to realize I didn't need to work to to be valued, I didn't need to work to be loved, that actually I was loved whatever I did by God and by other people. And just those changes started to become real in my life, then actually my heart did get better, loads better, to the point where I'm not on any medication for it, and I don't notice it most of the time. And I started building up exercise again, and being able to do things without thinking about it. And it struck me then that actually, if I'd had that quick fix, I'd have been left with all this underneath stuff that wasn't addressed. But because I didn't get the quick fix, I actually had to look at some of these other things. And at the end of it all, I was more whole and well than if I'd just had the quick answer. And I think that's a really good example for a lot of people where we just, particularly in our society, we want these quick fixes, we want the quick answers, we want to be able to carry on at the pace we're running at and doing everything that we're doing, and looking like we've got everything together and not needing people's help and all sorts of things, carrying stuff around with us in our big bags that we don't want to put down. And and maybe just in this lockdown period that we're in the UK, in this whole period of through the pandemic, it's a time when we can actually dare to look at some of those underneath things, some of those things that get hidden by the snow, and get some help. And maybe just start by talking to a friend, someone that you trust, just actually acknowledging that there is something there that isn't good for you. Um, that there's help through the medical services, through online things. There's loads of stuff online you can access, through churches, for the spiritual side of things. There's loads of help out there, but get help. Dare to start to look at it, because in the long run, you'll be more well, more whole. And you may or may not get the quick fix that you're hoping for. You may or may not get the answer that you're hoping for, but good will come from daring to look at some of those things that are underneath.